Hello everybody and welcome back. Today I have a quick video for you. We're just going to look into two things. One, I implemented the resource consumption. So now when you build an item or an object, the item requirements are consumed. And two, I added a flag so you can build many items at a time without going back to the build menu. Before going into the code, let's just check how it looks first. Here we are back in SteamVR. You just quickly look at the menu now. We have now 19 logs here, as you can see. And in the build menu, we have the same two items. We have a stone house for which we don't have enough stone to build. We have a pine that costs 2 log that we have. And we have here the check mark to build many at a time. So let's just leave that on and start building. So 19 logs should be enough for 9 pines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 9. And there we go. These are the 9 pines. Now if we go back to the inventory, you can see that we only have 1 log left. And if we go into the build menu, now when we select the pine, we cannot build it anymore. Let's look at what's changed. First, for the build UI, we added here a build many toggle. It's a very simple toggle that just turns on the check mark here, and based on this we set the flag for building many, which is part of the builder object. So it's only set up here. For the builder, we set the build many flag. This is a dynamic bool. So whatever the value of the toggle is, goes to the build many flag. Let's look into the code. There was a separate issue where the way that we had the input before, we would set here on the build or abort build events, we would set the game state as well. But that caused an issue where if you were building many items at a time, when you build the first one, it would set the game state back to neutral, and that would prevent you from continuing building. So instead of that, I decided to move the game setting code into the builder itself. For that, I added 4 different events on successful build single, when you're building only one item at a time, on successful build many, when you're building many, on insufficient items, when you run out of items, and on aborted build, when you stop building, because you can always cancel the build at any time. Here's the set build many flag method that you saw before. This is just used so that whenever you click on the toggle, that value is updated in the build many flag that we have here. Then on the build menu, we have this consume required materials method now. If for whatever reason the method fails, then we invoke the on insufficient items event here and get out of the build. Otherwise, if it succeeds, then we have consumed the items, and then we just check if the build many flag is on, and if we can continue building the item that we have selected. And if so, then we invoke the successful build many, and then we call the update prefab method that sets us up for building the next prefab. If we're not building many at a time, then we just call the build single method on successful build single, and then we deactivate the builder itself. So we stop building. Here you can see the consume required materials. First we check for the selected builded prefab if it can be built given our current inventory. If it can't, then we return false and get out of the method. But if it can be built given our current inventory, then we get the item requirements from the buildable prefab, and then we iterate through those requirements and we remove as many items as needed. And then if we decide to abort the build, we just also make sure to call the aborted build event. You can see here on the builder what we have added to the events here. On successful build single, we're doing a little bit of debug text, and then we're setting the game state back to neutral. On successful build many, we also have the same debug text, but we're keeping the state as the building game state. And then on insufficient items and aborted build, we also go back to the neutral game state, and we set some debug text to tell the player what's happening. And that's all. Let's go back in quickly to see it in action now that you know how it works. So here we are again. Check the inventory. We reset the inventory to 19 logs. We go to the build menu. And then for this one, we select build single. Let's build that. We build this one pine. And then we're out of the buildable state. Go back to the build menu. Select the pine again. Well, first let's check the inventory. We have 2 logs less because we built it. If we go back to the build menu, select pine, build many. Now when we build it, we can build many at a time. 1, 2, 3. Now I have 4. I can push a button to abort the build. So now we're out of the builder state again. Go back, build, select the pine, build it, and then add a few more until we run out of items. And then in the inventory, we have only one left. And that's it. This was a very straightforward build because we had everything else set up. It was just about making sure that we were removing the items from the inventory and add an extra loop or an extra check for being able to continue building many prefabs at a time without going out of the building state and without having to return to the build menu. But that's it. I hope that it was useful to you and that it was clear. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.